In the early 1900s, the Atlantic Ocean was a daunting barrier, separating continents and dreams. For centuries, it had been a symbol of both hope and fear, a vast, unpredictable expanse that challenged the bravest explorers and the most ambitious inventors. Crossing by ship took days, sometimes even weeks, and the journey was often perilous. But a new invention, the airplane, sparked imaginations worldwide, promising a future where the ocean could be crossed in hours, not days. Early planes were fragile, unreliable, and navigation was primitive. Pilots relied on little more than compasses and their instincts, flying in open cockpits exposed to the elements. The first aerial attempts weren't even in airplanes, but in balloons, which drifted helplessly at the mercy of the wind. These early pioneers risked their lives, hoping to harness the skies with little control over their fate. Many tried, many failed, and the dream of a transatlantic flight seemed impossible. Each failure was a harsh reminder of the ocean's power and the limits of technology at the time. Newspapers fueled the race, offering huge prizes for the first non-stop flight from North America to Europe. Headlines captured the public's imagination, turning pilots into celebrities and the Atlantic crossing into the ultimate adventure. In 1919, the US Navy's NC-4 flying boat made the first crossing, but it took 23 days and many stops. The journey was a logistical feat, involving a fleet of support ships and careful planning. This slow, careful journey proved it could be done, but the world wanted more, a true non-stop flight. The public's appetite for speed and daring was insatiable. The London Daily Mail's prize for a non-stop crossing in under 72 hours set the stage for a new kind of challenge. It was no longer just about crossing the ocean. It was about doing it faster, braver, and in a single unbroken flight. Pilots needed a plane that could carry enough fuel, not just for the distance, but for the unknowns, weather, navigation errors, and the ever-present risk of engine failure. And an engine that could run for days, enduring the strain of continuous flight over open water, with no land in sight and no room for mistakes. The world watched, waiting for someone to risk everything for a flight into the unknown. Radios crackled with updates, and crowds gathered, holding their breath for news of success or tragedy. The Atlantic was no longer unconquerable, but the ultimate test still remained. The challenge was as much about human spirit as it was about technology. The next attempt would demand courage, innovation, and a leap into history. Pilots and engineers worked tirelessly, knowing that success would change the world forever. The race for the skies was on, and the world was ready for a hero. Every takeoff was a gamble, every landing a potential legend. The age of transatlantic flight was about to begin, and with it, a new era of possibility and adventure. In June 1919, British aviators John Alcock and Arthur Whitten Brown set out to make history, determined to achieve what many believed was impossible. Their Vickers-Vimy bomber, packed with fuel and supplies, barely cleared the trees in Newfoundland before heading into the vast, unpredictable expanse of the Atlantic. Almost immediately, disaster struck. Their radio failed, and thick fog blinded them, cutting them off from the world and leaving them to navigate by instinct and skill alone. Brown, the navigator, had to rely on calculations, charts, and hope, peering through the gloom and trusting his training as they pressed on. The plane stalled and nearly crashed, dropping toward the churning ocean. But Alcock's quick reflexes regained control just above the waves, saving their mission and their lives. Freezing rain and ice threatened to bring them down, forcing Brown onto the wings to chip away ice mid-flight, risking everything in the bitter cold and howling wind. For 16 grueling hours, they battled exhaustion, numbing cold, and constant uncertainty, trusting only their skills, courage, and a bit of luck to see them through the darkness. Finally, as dawn broke, they spotted Ireland's rugged coast, a sight that meant survival and triumph. Mistaking a bog for a field, they crash-landed in the soft, muddy ground, but miraculously emerged unscathed, battered but victorious. They had done it, the first non-stop transatlantic flight, a feat that stunned the world and redefined what was possible in aviation. Alcock and Brown became instant heroes, celebrated for their extraordinary courage, determination, and the spirit of adventure that carried them across the ocean. Their flight proved the Atlantic could be crossed in a single leap, inspiring a new era of exploration and innovation in the skies. The world cheered. The impossible had become reality, and the boundaries of human achievement had shifted forever. The age of daring aviation had a new benchmark, and the dream of connecting continents by air was suddenly within reach. The Atlantic was no longer an insurmountable barrier, but a challenge that had been conquered by human ingenuity and bravery. The race for the skies had its first true champions, and their legacy would inspire generations of aviators to come. 8 years after the first non-stop transatlantic flight, a new and even more daunting challenge emerged for aviators around the world. The goal was audacious: a solo, non-stop flight from New York to Paris, crossing thousands of miles of open ocean with no one to rely on but yourself. The prize was $25,000, but the true reward was immortality, eternal fame for the first to succeed. Charles Lindbergh, a relatively unknown young airmail pilot, stepped forward with a bold plan and his custom-built Spirit of St. Louis. To save every possible ounce of weight, he flew without a radio, no parachute, and with a massive fuel tank blocking his forward view, sacrificing comfort and safety for the sake of distance. On the morning of May 20, 1927, Lindbergh took off from Roosevelt Field. His plane, so heavy with fuel it barely cleared the telephone wires at the end of the runway. For 33.5 grueling hours, he flew alone, battling exhaustion, icy storms, and the endless, daunting expanse of the Atlantic Ocean below. He fought off sleep by flying low over the waves, letting the cold ocean spray lash his face and keep him awake, his senses razor sharp. When he finally glimpsed the French coastline, a wave of relief and triumph washed over him, knowing he had achieved the impossible. Landing at Le Bourget airfield in Paris, he was greeted by a massive, jubilant crowd, their cheers echoing his own sense of victory. Overnight, Lindbergh became an international superstar, hailed as the Lone Eagle, a symbol of daring and determination. His flight was more than just a record. It became a symbol of courage, innovation, and the boundless possibilities of human achievement. Lindbergh proved to the world that long-distance air travel was not only possible, but would soon become the future of transportation. The world was forever changed by his daring solo journey, as the Atlantic was no longer an insurmountable barrier. The ocean became a bridge, connecting continents and people in ways never before imagined. Lindbergh's flight inspired millions to dream bigger, to reach higher, and to believe that the sky was no longer the limit. His legacy endures, reminding us that with courage and vision, even the wildest dreams can take flight. Inspired by Lindbergh, Amelia Earhart set out to prove women belonged in the cockpit. In 1928, she crossed the Atlantic as a passenger, but longed to pilot her own flight. 4 years later, she took off solo from Newfoundland, facing storms, equipment failures, and exhaustion. After nearly 15 hours, she landed in Ireland, becoming the first woman to fly solo across the Atlantic. Her courage made her a global icon and showed that adventure had no gender. Earhart's flight and those of other pioneers turned transatlantic flight from a daredevil's feat into a real possibility. The ocean was becoming a bridge, not a barrier. Regular air travel was on the horizon. The era of aviation trailblazers had arrived. The next challenge was making transatlantic flight routine. In the 1930s, flying boats like Pan Am's luxurious Clippers offered exclusive, expensive crossings for the wealthy. Passengers enjoyed fine dining and comfort, but the journey was still long. Airships like the Hindenburg briefly offered another option, until disaster struck in 1937, ending the era of Zeppelins. World War II changed everything, demanding reliable, long-range planes for military transport. Thousands of aircraft crossed the Atlantic, making the once dangerous journey routine. Wartime innovation laid the groundwork for post-war commercial aviation. The Atlantic was no longer a barrier, but a busy aerial highway. The age of mass air travel was about to begin. After World War II, Powerful propeller planes made transatlantic flights more common, but still slow and noisy. The jet engine changed everything, promising faster, smoother journeys. In 1958, BOAC launched the first transatlantic jet service, soon followed by Pan Am's Boeing 707. The jet age had arrived, cutting travel time in half and opening the skies to more people. Business, tourism, and family connections flourished as flights became affordable and frequent. The North Atlantic track system managed the growing traffic, using jet stream winds to optimize routes. Eastbound flights rode tailwinds, westbound fought headwinds. The skies grew crowded, and the Atlantic shrank. The era of slow, exclusive travel was over. Speed and efficiency now ruled the skies. The world was more connected than ever. The next leap was supersonic travel, the Concorde. British and French engineers built a jet that could cross the Atlantic in under 3.5 hours, twice the speed of sound. Launched in 1976, Concorde flights were the ultimate in luxury and speed, flying at 60,000 feet. Celebrities and executives paid a premium for the privilege. For 27 years, Concorde was the fastest way to cross the ocean. But high costs, noise restrictions, and a tragic crash ended its reign in 2003. Supersonic travel became a memory, but the dream of speed endured. Concorde set records that still stand. The Atlantic had never felt smaller. The era of supersonic passenger flight was brief, but unforgettable. After Concorde, transatlantic travel focused on efficiency and accessibility. The New York-London route became one of the world's busiest, vital for business and tourism. Airline alliances dominated, but low-cost carriers like Norwegian and WOW Air shook up the market with cheap, no-frills flights. New, fuel-efficient planes made it possible to fly between smaller cities, giving travelers more options. The giant four-engine jets faded, replaced by quieter, greener twin-engine planes. Transatlantic flight became routine and essential, connecting millions every year. The glamour of the past gave way to reliability and choice. The Atlantic was now a well-traveled skyway. The spirit of innovation lives on in transatlantic flight. Speed records still fall, like a 747 subsonic dash from New York to London in under 5 hours. The future is about sustainability. Solar-powered planes and greener technology are on the horizon. Climate change is already affecting flight times as jet streams shift and fuel use changes. The Atlantic, once a barrier, is now a vital link, uniting families, businesses, and cultures. From daring pioneers to routine crossings, the journey continues. The story of transatlantic flight is one of courage, ingenuity, and connection. The sky remains open, and the adventure goes on. If you enjoyed this journey through aviation history, don't forget to subscribe for more fascinating stories from the skies.